Hey, what's up, guys? I had a pretty cool idea I want to talk to you about today, and that's the differences between a chatterbait and a spinnerbait, and when I kind of decide on which one I want to throw over the other. There's a few advantages on a chatterbait over a spinnerbait, and there's a few advantages over a spinnerbait on a chatterbait, and that's what I'm going to give you a rundown on today, so stay tuned for that. So when it comes to chatterbait, I know everybody's heard of it, but there's a few advantages of this bait over a spinnerbait. For me anyways, for my opinion, that I think makes this bait a little better at certain times. So early in the year, pre-spawn fish, they do like to be around docks, under docks. So this bait right here, you can skip. You can skip this sucker as far as you want to skip it, as long as you have a good trailer on it. For that, I like a Razor Shad by Z-Man. Just makes things go a lot smoother, skips a lot better. And the reason I like a chatterbait over a spinnerbait when these fish are under the docks is because you can skip this bait a mile. You cannot skip a spinnerbait. You can maybe get 2 skips out of it if you have a trailer on there, or a bait for a trailer on there. But this bait right here can get anywhere. It can go under those docks. You can skip it anywhere. And another thing about the chatterbait to keep in mind is, for me personally, when those fish are in certain places, you got to get to those. You got to get to where those fish are at. You know, if early in the year, usually fish are not really chasing that much, so the fish are not really going to want to go 5 feet away to go eat a bait. So getting a chatterbait right on top of them when those fish are under those places or back in those corners to where you can skip it at is a very big key. You know, if you have a spinnerbait, for example, and you're casting and you can't quite get to where they're at, you might not get that bite. And the reason is, like I said earlier, that time of year when the water's cold, the fish are not moving as much. They're kind of stable where they're at. They're lethargic, and they kind of want something in front of them, on their face, on their bed, whatever the case may be. So that's something to kind of keep in mind about those two baits. But something else I want to talk to you about the chatterbait is a disadvantage. This bait, it'll get anywhere you want to put it, but at the same time, sometimes when you roll this sucker over a lay down or over a piece of wood, it'll get hung up really easy. It's because it's got an open hook, as you can see there. Really nothing stopping it, so it just rolls over, and every now and then it'll get that hook on that lay down. But a way to fix that problem is go to a spinnerbait. You can throw a spinnerbait over a lay down, and 99.99% of the time, this sucker's going to roll right over top of it. It's going to keep on going, and that's what gets that bite a lot of times. You gotta get where the fish are at. No matter if it's taking a risk to get hung up or not, you gotta get where the fish are at. And in laydowns, the spinnerbait excels over the chatterbait because of that reason. You can throw this thing way back in the laydowns. You can work your way through the laydown, kind of pick it apart, reel a little faster when you need to, and this bait will just hop over that log and go back down, and you keep reeling. Another thing about the spinnerbait that I kind of keep in mind is what it looks like to a bass. You know, what is a spinnerbait to a bass? And to me, it's a school of shad. That's kind of how I think of it. You see this right here, there's 2 blades. To fish, that probably looks like 4 little bitty shad. 4 or 5 little bitty shad there. This right here probably looks like some shad as well. So they think it's just a ball of shad swimming by them. So in the time of years that the fish are eating smaller shad, or they're eating big baits, big shad, big gizzard shad, this may look like one big shad to them. But I kind of think, in my opinion, this bait looks more like a school of shad to a bass, because you got 2 blades here, which go to bass. That probably looks like 4 or 5 little bait fish, and so does this right here. Looks like 4 or 5 little bait fish. And I think that gets a few more bites in certain times of year, especially the fall when they get on that small bait, or shad spawn time of year when they get on small bait. Even early in the year, it depends on what lake you're at. Some lakes may have small bait, and a spinnerbait might be better over a chatterbait. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about a chatterbait as well, is a chatterbait to me does not look like a bunch of shad. This looks like one big shad, one big meal for a bass, and I think that's something to keep in mind as well. Yes, you can get this bait wherever you want, but to a bass, this looks like one big bait, one big snack that those bass are going to eat for the day and be done. I feel like a spinnerbait is more kind of, they're just going to eat something. Now, I could be totally wrong on that. That's just my opinion. But on chatterbait fishing, to me, this feels like one big bait. It's got one little blade right here on the front. It's got one body size. It's just one thing right here. So I feel like, personally, the fish think this is just a one meal and done type bait, which might be why you get. To me, I catch bigger fish on a chatterbait, but that's just because I throw a chatterbait probably more than a spinnerbait. I used to throw a spinnerbait a lot more, but when I started figuring out how you can skip this bait under places and get it to where you want it to get, that's kind of when I went to the chatterbait over the spinnerbait. But it's all personal preference. But it all has its downfalls. It all has its uphills, and there's times to throw it and there's times to not. But like I said, for me personally, a chatterbait kind of seems like a one meal type bait for a fish. But you can get it anywhere you want to get it. You can skip it wherever you want to skip it. It gets big bites, but it will get hung up in certain places. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to a spinnerbait, like I said, to kind of sum it up, I think this is a little school of bait fish. If the fish are feeding on smaller bait, or if the fish is way back in something you can't get to them, that chatterbait excels a little over the spinnerbait. But if those fish are out, if those fish are not way up under stuff, if they're on the edge of stuff, if they're on the rocks sometimes, and you want to throw a spinnerbait, this is a great bait as well. It gets the job done. It catches a lot of bass. This is one of the #1 fish catchers in the world for bass. So check them out, Z-Man Spinnerbait, Z-Man Chatterbait. They'll catch you some bass.